We've all heard the saying, nice guys finish last. Everyone claims to want a nice guy, until it's time to promote someone, listen to someone, or follow someone's lead. In those moments, is it ever the nice guy? In a world obsessed with rising to the top, nice is a currency without value. Being liked might get you applause, but it won't get you leadership. It won't get you respect, and it certainly won't get you control. In fact, the pursuit of being liked, of keeping the peace, avoiding offence and shrinking to fit, is often the very reason people lose their power. We all know that guy. Maybe it's you. He holds the elevator even though he's late, smiles in meetings when he's exhausted, bites his tongue when he wants to speak, says yes to work no one else wants, stays late, never complains, never asks for credit. Among friends, he always shows up, sends check-in messages, offers rides. In love, he's present, kind, selfless, the kind of man the world claims to admire, until it doesn't. Because when it mattered, he was overlooked, passed by. And the question that haunts him, why wasn't it enough? The truth is, it was never about being nice. People don't follow the agreeable, they follow the assertive. They don't remember the pleasant, they remember the bold. In this video, we'll dismantle the myth of the nice guy. We'll explore how approval-seeking kills your influence, and how to flip the script to become respected without becoming someone you're not. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Approval Trap. We grow up being taught that being liked is the highest social currency. In school, likeable kids are praised. In family dynamics, approval keeps the peace. And so, many carry that survival strategy into adulthood, wearing niceness like armour. But here's the dark truth. The constant need for approval makes you predictable, pliable, and weak in the eyes of those who understand power. When you constantly say yes, you create no friction, and without friction, there is no respect. People respect those who have boundaries, those who can say no and mean it. The approval seeker, instead, softens every opinion, avoids confrontation, and smiles through discomfort. Not out of kindness, but out of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of not being enough. In the workplace, these individuals often get labelled as dependable, but never indispensable. They are passed over for leadership roles because they don't command presence. In relationships, they are loved for their loyalty, but rarely desired for their strength. And in politics, they are seen as pawns, useful, but never powerful. To escape the approval trap, you must become comfortable with being disliked. Not because you are hostile, but because you are clear. People may not like your boundaries, but they will respect them, and that respect, not affection, is the foundation of power. Reclaiming your power starts when you stop seeking to be liked by everyone, and start seeking alignment with your own values. Approval is fleeting. Integrity is unshakable. Chapter 2. The Cost of Chronic Agreeableness. Agreeableness in moderation is a social lubricant. But chronic agreeableness is a silent killer of authority. When you nod along to opinions you disagree with, when you downplay your own needs, and when you avoid asserting your voice to keep harmony, you're signalling to the world that your value is negotiable. The nice guy becomes a placeholder. In meetings, his voice fades into the background. In social dynamics, he becomes the emotional caretaker, the one who makes everyone else comfortable, often at his own expense. And the most damaging part, he mistakes this emotional labour for influence. Influence doesn't come from appeasement. It comes from tension, from standing your ground, from offering contrast, from being willing to disrupt the consensus. Leaders are not those who avoid discomfort, but those who know when to lean into it. Consider the corporate world. The person who plays the diplomat may be liked, but the one who asserts a bold vision, who takes calculated risks and owns his stance, is the one who rises. In relationships, the chronic peacemaker eventually becomes invisible. There is no edge, no polarity, no leadership. To reclaim your edge, start saying what you actually think. Stop over-apologizing. Let go of the need to be perceived as nice, and instead aim to be perceived as clear, direct, and self-respecting. Nice guys don't finish last because they are kind. They finish last because they give away their power, one polite silence at a time. Chapter 3. Power and Polarity in Relationships. Attraction thrives on polarity. Masculine and feminine dynamics, dominance and submission, tension and release. These forces create the electricity that makes relationships compelling. The nice guy, in his pursuit of emotional safety, often flattens that polarity. By trying too hard to be agreeable, to never trigger discomfort, he sacrifices the very presence that creates desire. He becomes a therapist, not a partner, a supporter, not a leader. And over time, that deference becomes resentment, not just in him, but in the one he's trying to please. People may say they want a kind, emotionally available partner, and they do. But they also want someone who knows who they are. Someone who can take the lead. Someone who isn't afraid to disagree, to have his own desires, to create friction when necessary. Being kind is not the same as being passive. Assertiveness is not cruelty. It's direction. And in relationships, direction is magnetic. Power in intimacy doesn't come from dominance. It comes from clarity, from knowing your values, articulating your needs, and not abandoning yourself to avoid rocking the boat. Ironically, when you stop trying to be liked and start showing up as your whole self, the right people are drawn to you more powerfully than ever. Stop asking, do they like me? Start asking, am I showing up honestly? That shift changes everything. Chapter 4. Evolutionary Psychology and Social Hierarchies. From an evolutionary lens, social hierarchies were survival mechanisms. Those who asserted dominance secured better resources, mates, and alliances. Niceness, while socially useful, was never a leadership trait. It was a cohesion trait. Leaders were rarely the most agreeable. They were the most decisive, the most consistent, and the most unapologetically authentic. In modern life, those primal instincts still operate beneath the surface. We unconsciously sort people into dominance hierarchies based on how they carry themselves, how they speak, and how they respond to pressure. The nice guy, by avoiding conflict and over-accommodating, signals subordination. Think of group dynamics. The person who always offers to help but never asserts an opinion is useful, but rarely followed. The one who expresses strong values, sets boundaries, and holds others accountable, even at the risk of friction, is perceived as the alpha, regardless of title or role. In politics too, niceness is rarely rewarded. What gains traction is clarity of vision, the ability to inspire or polarize, and the courage to stand firm. Approval-seeking makes you malleable, and malleability is a liability in the pursuit of power. If you want to rise, you must be willing to disrupt, to be disliked by some. Because the human mind equates assertiveness with leadership, not likability. You don't need to abandon your empathy, but you do need to stop outsourcing your self-worth to how well others approve of you. Approval is a leash. Cut it. Chapter 5. The reframe. Assertiveness over approval. The solution isn't to become cold, it's to become clear. Assertiveness isn't about volume, it's about certainty. It's the willingness to express your truth, to make requests, to say no, and to tolerate the discomfort of being misunderstood. When you reframe your identity from being liked to being respected, everything changes. You stop over-explaining. You start setting standards. You communicate with groundedness instead of neediness. And people feel that shift instantly. In the workplace, assertiveness makes you trustworthy. It tells others you're not afraid of the hard conversations, that you can hold your own. In relationships, it creates polarity, a sense that you are self-led, not validation hungry. And in social hierarchies, it distinguishes you as someone who is centered, not reactive, not manipulable. You don't need to become an alpha caricature. You need to become integrated, kind but not a pushover, generous but with limits, empathetic but boundaried. This is the antidote to the nice guy myth, and it starts the moment you stop trying to be liked and start trying to be whole. Chapter 6. Why boundaries make you magnetic. Boundaries are not walls, they're gates, and paradoxically, the people who have the clearest, firmest boundaries are often the most attractive, not just romantically, but in every sphere of life. Why? Because boundaries signal self-respect. They tell others, this person values themselves, this person isn't desperate. Most nice guys fear boundaries because they're afraid of rejection. They think saying no will drive people away, but the opposite is true. When you clearly communicate your limits, people trust you more. They know where they stand. They know you won't say yes out of guilt or obligation, and that makes your yes meaningful. Confidence isn't about bravado, it's about congruence. Do your words match your actions? Do your values show up in how you spend your time? If you say you value honesty, but avoid conflict to keep the peace, that inconsistency creates internal anxiety and external confusion. Magnetism comes from alignment, from living in a way that is authentic, unapologetic, and embodied. And that means choosing discomfort over disconnection, saying no when it matters, enforcing standards that protect your time, energy, and focus. So if you've been overlooked, misunderstood, or taken advantage of, don't double down on niceness, double down on clarity. Because the people who are drawn to you when you abandon yourself aren't your tribe. The people who are drawn to you when you own yourself are. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're sacred, and they are the cornerstone of true lasting power. Chapter 7. When Niceness becomes manipulation. At first glance, the nice guy seems like the ideal friend, partner, or colleague. He's agreeable, reliable, and always ready to help. But underneath that soft surface lies a subtle but destructive form of manipulation, one that doesn't come from malice, but from fear. Specifically the fear of rejection, disapproval, and abandonment. Nice guys don't ask for what they want. They hint, they please, they overgive in hopes of being valued in return. But there's a hidden transaction occurring, an emotional scorecard that keeps track of their sacrifices. I was there for you, so now you should be there for me. I never complained, so you should appreciate me. The giving isn't free, it's leveraged. And when their expectations go unmet, because they were never clearly stated, resentment brews. That's not kindness, that's covert control. This behaviour is rooted in childhood conditioning. Many nice guys learned early that being good was how to earn love or avoid conflict. Over time, they came to believe that suppressing their own needs was the key to belonging. So as adults, they avoid directness. They don't say no. They don't express anger. They don't make waves. But all that emotion has to go somewhere, and it often leaks out as passive-aggressive behaviour, guilt-tripping, or quiet bitterness. Relationships start to feel heavy, because everything is done with an unspoken hope that someone finally will notice their effort and repay it with validation. People sense this, even if they can't articulate it. They feel the neediness underneath the niceness, and the result is almost always the opposite of what the nice guy wants. Instead of being loved, he's avoided. Instead of being admired, he's pitied. Instead of feeling empowered, he feels invisible. The only way out is through radical honesty. State your desires plainly. Set expectations clearly. Give only what you genuinely want to give, not what you're offering to keep the peace. Speak your truth without apology, and trust that the right people can handle it. Manipulation ends where authenticity begins, and true connection only starts once the performance ends. Chapter 8. From Pleaser to Leader. Leadership isn't born in the crowd, it's forged in clarity. The nice guy often confuses harmony with strength. He believes that if he can keep everyone happy, he'll earn influence. But in reality, people don't follow those who avoid conflict. They follow those who know where they're going. Power respects direction, not deference. The pleaser tries to anticipate every reaction. He filters his words through imagined judgments. He fears upsetting anyone, so he says what he thinks others want to hear. He seeks approval, not alignment. But leadership demands presence. It requires making hard choices, setting clear boundaries, and sometimes being unpopular for the sake of integrity. Think about powerful figures in history, in business, in your own life. The ones who earned real respect weren't the most agreeable. They were the most grounded. When they spoke, people listened, not because they were loud, but because they were certain. To evolve from pleaser to leader, you must let go of the need to be liked. Replace it with the desire to be understood. Speak directly, make decisions, take responsibility for the outcomes. You'll lose some people along the way, but you'll gain the trust of those who matter. And here's the paradox. When you stop seeking approval, you actually become more attractive. Because people crave clarity. They want to feel anchored around someone who knows who they are. You don't need to dominate, you don't need to control, but you do need to stop hiding behind softness and call it strength. Leadership is not about having all the answers, it's about having enough self-respect to stand for something, even when others won't. Chapter 9. Why boundaries build attraction. Nice guys fear boundaries. To them, saying no feels cruel. Standing firm feels like rejection. Drawing a line feels like abandonment. But what they don't realise is that the absence of boundaries doesn't build closeness, it destroys it. Boundaries are the framework of all healthy relationships. They're not walls to keep people out. They're doors, clearly marked, honestly managed, and respectfully opened. When you communicate a boundary, you're not pushing someone away. You're inviting them into a healthier dynamic. You're saying, I value myself and I respect you enough to show you how to interact with me. This is especially important in romantic relationships. Many nice guys think being endlessly available will make them more desirable. They say yes to everything. They accommodate every whim. But attraction doesn't work like that. We're drawn to people who have their own lives, who hold their ground, who aren't afraid to disappoint us if it means staying true to themselves. A man without boundaries becomes emotionally porous, a sponge for other people's chaos. He burns out. He feels unseen. And worst of all, he quietly resents the people he tried so hard to please. But when you start saying no, when you assert your needs calmly and firmly, everything changes. People may resist at first. They're used to the version of you that was always available. But over time, your self-respect becomes magnetic. In work settings, boundaries protect your time and energy. In friendships, they prevent codependency. In love, they create the space for real passion to grow. Because desire needs distance, not desperation. Boundaries don't make you hard, they make you honest. And in a world addicted to comfort and validation, honesty is power. Chapter 10. Integration, Becoming Whole. The antidote to nice guy syndrome is not aggression. It's not arrogance or emotional detachment. It's integration, the merging of strength and softness into a coherent whole. We're not here to shame kindness. True kindness, the kind that expects nothing in return, is one of the rarest and most powerful forces in human life. But when kindness becomes a currency for approval, it ceases to be noble. It becomes self-erasure. To become whole, you must stop splitting yourself in two. Stop fragmenting into the nice version of yourself for others. Stop hiding your truth in exchange for comfort. Begin reconnecting with the parts of you that you abandoned in order to be accepted. You can be compassionate and direct. You can be generous and self-protecting. You can be understanding and immovable. This is the heart of emotional maturity. To be able to hold contradictions without collapsing. When you become whole, you stop apologizing for your existence. You no longer wait for permission to express yourself. You don't shrink to fit someone else's comfort zone. You take up space, not out of entitlement, but out of alignment with your truth. The integrated man is not liked by everyone, but he is respected by the right people. He doesn't chase validation. He draws it in through presence. He doesn't fear disconnection because he's connected to himself. That is the death of the nice guy, and the birth of the grounded, sovereign man who no longer needs to be chosen, because he has already chosen himself. Chapter 11. The Psychology of Passive Powerlessness. Nice guys often fall into a subtle psychological trap. They confuse passivity with goodness. Somewhere along the way, they were conditioned to believe that not rocking the boat, not standing up for themselves, and always yielding to others made them morally superior. But there's a dark undercurrent to this mindset. Passive powerlessness. This is the tendency to relinquish control not because it's noble, but because it feels safer. Avoiding conflict becomes a defense mechanism. Saying yes becomes a shield against rejection. Smiling through discomfort becomes a strategy to keep the peace. But in doing so, the nice guy sacrifices his agency. Passive powerlessness is not a personality flaw, it's often a learned survival strategy. Many nice guys grew up in environments where their needs were ignored or punished, so they learned to silence themselves. They became agreeable to avoid punishment. They became helpful to feel needed. They became invisible to avoid judgment. But in adulthood, this strategy backfires. People don't reward invisibility. They overlook it. They don't promote the compliant. They promote the confident. They don't desire the one who bends. They crave the one who stands firm. True personal power requires a shift, not toward aggression, but toward ownership. You must own your boundaries, your values, your time, your voice. Passivity might have protected you in the past, but now it's the very thing sabotaging your future. Chapter 12. The High Cost of Emotional Labour. One of the most common traps nice guys fall into is overfunctioning emotionally for everyone else. They become the unofficial therapist in the friend group, the one who always listens, the one who always supports, uplifts, comforts, even when they are emotionally depleted themselves. They believe this emotional labour will earn them love, but more often than not it earns them dependence without respect. You see, when you constantly absorb others' emotions without setting boundaries, you train people to offload onto you, without ever reciprocating, and over time you feel resentful, drained, and invisible. But because you've built your identity around being the good guy, you don't know how to say no. What's worse is this. People start to see you as useful but not powerful, kind but not compelling. You become the emotional janitor in everyone else's life, and they forget you have a life of your own. There's nothing wrong with being emotionally intelligent, but if you're constantly managing other people's feelings at the expense of your own truth, you lose your edge. Emotional generosity must be balanced by emotional sovereignty. You're not responsible for everyone else's healing. You're responsible for your integrity. Chapter 13. The Silent Contract That Always Backfires. Nice guys often operate under an unspoken agreement. If I'm good to people, they'll be good to me. They give more than they receive. They suppress frustration. They prioritise others' needs. But underneath that, there's a silent hope. If I do everything right, someone will finally notice me, appreciate me, love me. This is what psychologists call a covert contract. It's a subconscious deal you make with the world, but never say out loud, and because no one else agreed to it, it always ends in disappointment. This pattern is devastating in relationships. The nice guy gives and gives, until one day he explodes. He can't understand why all his efforts haven't been rewarded, why the promotion went to someone else, why his crush ghosted him, why his friend didn't show up for him. But here's the truth. Self-sacrifice without boundaries is not virtuous. It's manipulative. It's an attempt to control people's affection by over-delivering and under-communicating. To break the covert contract, you must learn to give from a place of wholeness, not expectation. Express your needs openly. Set boundaries before resentment builds, and stop assuming that being liked means being chosen. In the real world, people choose the ones who are clear, not the ones who are compliant. Chapter 14. The Likeability Trap in Leadership. Let's talk about the workplace. One of the biggest myths is that being likeable is a path to leadership. But the reality is, likability and leadership often have an inverse relationship. The more you try to be liked, the less decisive you become, the less direct, the less visionary. True leaders are not universally liked. They are respected, sometimes feared, always remembered. Nice guys at work often struggle to say no. They dilute their opinions to avoid stepping on toes. They avoid hard conversations in the name of harmony. But what they don't realise is, leadership demands conflict. It demands clarity. It demands risk. In corporate dynamics, power flows to those who assert it, those who take credit, those who speak up when the room is silent. You don't get ahead by keeping everyone comfortable. You get ahead by making strong decisions and standing behind them. This doesn't mean becoming ruthless. It means developing executive presence, the ability to own a room, articulate your vision, and handle friction without folding. If you want to rise, stop chasing approval, start cultivating authority. Chapter 15. When kindness becomes a cage. Kindness is a beautiful trait, but when weaponized against yourself, it becomes a prison. Nice guys often feel guilty for wanting more, for asking for space, for asserting themselves. They've internalized the belief that assertiveness is arrogance, that self-interest is selfishness. But here's the paradox. The most impactful people are both kind and fierce, compassionate and unshakable, generous and unapologetic. Being kind doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It means being real enough to say no when it matters. It means being generous without being exploited. It means being caring without being controlled. When kindness becomes an identity rather than a choice, you stop acting from freedom and start acting from fear. You're afraid of being called mean, harsh, difficult. But let me tell you, people will call you those things the moment you stop serving their convenience. And when they do, that's when you know you're finally stepping into your power. Chapter 16. Becoming Unignorable. So how do you make the shift? You stop being palatable and start being unignorable. That means you say what you mean, even when your voice shakes. You protect your time like it's currency. You set boundaries, not as punishments, but as declarations of self-respect. You stop trying to be nice and start being real. Being unignorable is about stepping into full visibility, not by shouting, but by standing tall, by speaking with conviction, by making people feel you, not just like you. It's about selective vulnerability, revealing your truth without performing it. It's about owning your shadow, not pretending you're above anger, desire, ambition, and ego, but using them consciously, powerfully. You weren't born to be tolerated, you were born to be remembered. Chapter 17. Reflections for you. So now ask yourself, who have you been? The agreeable one? The silent supporter? The man who always says it's fine when it's not? How many times have you swallowed your opinions, softened your truth, or walked away from what you deserved just to be liked? How often have you mistaken being needed for being respected? How often have you confused being wanted for being chosen? And in the quiet of your own mind, have you ever wondered, what if I stopped trying to be liked and started trying to be known? Because here's the truth, the world doesn't need another nice guy. It needs a new kind of man. A man who is kind but not passive, gentle but not invisible, empathetic but not emotionally exhausted. A man who can give without erasing himself. What if your power has been waiting behind the word no? What if your truth is not something to hide, but something to wield? What would happen if you stopped diluting your opinions, stopped apologizing for taking up space, and stopped performing kindness as a survival tactic? Would people leave? Would they call you arrogant? Would they say, you've changed? Let them. Because you didn't come here to play small, you didn't come here to be tolerated, you came here to lead, to build, to choose, and to be chosen. Not for how easy you are, but for how real you are. So here's the final question. Are you ready to stop being liked?